Hello Cloud Pedagogians, welcome back to the course. In today's topic, we are going to discuss Amazon EC2 instance lifecycle. One of the main reasons why EC2 provides so much value is the fact that you can provision new EC2 instances on demand and just as easily. You can get rid of instances that you no longer needed. In most cases, you only get charged for instances that are currently running. EC2 allows you to stop and start instances at will, which enables you to treat your fleet of EC2 instances as elastic, scaling them in or out. Then, at the end of the billing cycle, you only pay for what you use. We are building up to the idea of scaling your fleet of EC2 instances in and out to serve the demand. But before we get there, it's important to understand some of the basics of EC2. So that's what we are going to talk about, the EC2 lifecycle. An Amazon EC2 instance transitions through different states from the moment you launch it through its termination. You launch an EC2 instance from an AMI as you learned in a previous lesson. And once the EC2 instance is launched, it enters a pending state. This state is essentially your virtual machine booting up. Once the instance is ready for use, it enters the running state. In the running state, you will be charged for the EC2 instance. From running, you have a couple of different options. You can reboot the instance, which is similar to rebooting, say, your laptop. It turns off and then it turns back on, pretty straightforward. You also can choose to stop your instance. It will enter a stopping phase and then it will enter the stopped phase. Stopping an instance is like powering down your laptop. You can always turn it back on and it will go through the usual boot sequence, like moving through the pending state and then back to the running state. Another option which is similar to stop is stop hibernate. This also enters the stopping phase and then the stopped phase. You can compare this to how you lock your laptop and just shut the lid. But when you open it back, everything is still in place exactly where you left it. There is no boot sequence required. You are back up and running after a couple of seconds of the computer waking up, since the state of the machine was returned to the memory when you stopped it. The state of the machine can be drawn from memory and put back into place. Then you are back up and running. Now the last option depicted here is the terminated option. When you terminate an instance, it enters the shutting down phase and then the terminated phase. Terminating EC2 instance is like taking your laptop out for a long boat ride on the coast side and then throwing it into the ocean, getting rid of it forever. It's now lost to the great sea. There is no hope in finding your laptop in the deep blue sea, obviously, right? Anyways, I hope any data that you had stored on an EC2 instance that you did terminate, you had backed up somewhere. Because whenever you do terminate an instance, anything on that instance goes with it. That being said, there is a feature called termination protection that you can enable if you are worried about instances being terminated accidentally. You will also learn about persistent storage in EC2 in the future lessons. So don't worry, we will show you ways where you can make sure that any data that you have sticks around even if the EC2 instance doesn't. So that is the EC2 instance lifecycle. It's definitely a good idea to remember how all of this works if you're planning on using to host your student directory application in our case. And don't think of terminating instances as a bad thing. If your EC2 instance is having a technical trouble for one reason or another, or maybe it needs an update or a patch, instead of logging into the instance to fix it or install software, you can just launch a new one with the new changes in place, and then you could terminate the old instance having the new one takes in its place. You of course can do in place updates as well as, but just know that you have the option to decide how to handle these sorts of tasks. You can also launch or terminate EC2 instances to meet the demand. So as demand for your application increases, you can launch more instances, and then as it decreases, you can terminate instances. This keeps your EC2 instance fleet in line with demand. So again, terminating an instance is not a bad thing and it should not be feared. Now let's discuss the cost aspects of this. You only get charged for an EC2 instance if you are in the running state or if you are in the stopping state preparing to hibernate. This means that you can stop instances when they are not in use. Say for example, if you have applications that are only really used during the work week, run them when your employees are clocked in and then stop them when they are not. Remember, you could always start from a stop state, allowing them to resume working when necessary. So in this exercise, we are going to put all the new EC2 knowledge to good use. You're going to launch a new Amazon EC2 instance into your default VPC, just as we did for our demo in the previous lesson. You will select an AMI, an instance type and size. Part of the configurations will be to paste a user data script into the advanced configurations. This user data script is a script that runs when an EC2 instance is booted up for the first time. This is most commonly used to download and configure any software packages or dependencies that are needed to run the application on the instance. It's good for you to pay close attention to these sort of details as you move through the exercise, especially if you plan on using EC2 outside of this classroom environment. Once your EC2 instance is booted up, you will be able to send a request to the student directory application and view its response in the browser. This EC2 instance will not yet be connected to any backend database to store student information. So the expected result for this is simply to load the home page with no data displayed. Once you are done verifying your EC2 instance is up and running and configured correctly, you will then stop the instance so that you can view the state change. Then finally, you will terminate the instance as some cleanup. In future lab, you will relaunch this application but using your own private network or VPC. The default network settings we are using for this lab are not secure, and I don't recommend that you continue to use these settings outside of this course. It is simply a proof of concept so that you can have experience going into the next lesson, making it all a little bit easier to wrap your mind around. I hope this is useful and interesting for you. When you are ready, please join me in my next lecture. Until then, see you.